There are stories that leave you speechless, but what Isabel experienced after her death is something that defies all logic. She didn't just cross over to the other side. Jesus himself revealed a truth to her that few are willing to hear. What she saw and what they told her will change the way she sees life forever. Are you ready to find out? My name is Isabel, and what I'm about to tell you is not a dream or a hallucination. It's something I experienced, something that changed my life forever. I never imagined I would die, but that's exactly what happened. I crossed over to the other side and saw things that I would never have believed were possible. And what I saw, what Jesus showed me, is something that the world needs to know. That day started like any other. I woke up early, made my coffee, and followed my routine as usual. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but there was something in the air, a strange feeling that I couldn't identify. At that moment, I didn't pay attention. I got in the car and followed my usual route to work, not imagining that it would be the last time I would travel that route. The traffic was heavy, and my mind was on 1,000 things. The stress of work, the debts, the worries of everyday life. But then something happened that changed everything. A sudden pain in my chest, a feeling of emptiness, and suddenly the impact, a strong blow, the sound of breaking glass, screams in the distance, and then silence. When I opened my eyes, something was not right. I could see my own body inside the motionless car. I saw people running towards me. I saw the paramedics trying to get me out of the vehicle, but I was not in my body. I was floating above the scene, observing everything with a clarity impossible to describe. I felt no fear. I felt no pain, just a deep peace. But the strangest thing was the light. A warm, living light that began to envelop everything. Something was calling me. It was a sensation impossible to resist. I did not walk. I did not fly. But I moved towards that light as if I was being absorbed by an invisible force. I had no control, but I also did not want to resist. The light became more intense, and with it a feeling of absolute love that I had never felt on earth. It was as if everything I had ever looked for was there waiting for me. Suddenly, I found myself in a completely different place. It was an immense and beautiful space with colors that I had never seen before, with a peace that cannot be described with words. The air was light, almost as if I was breathing light instead of oxygen. And then I saw him before me. It was Jesus. His presence was impossible to ignore. I didn't need to be told who he was. I knew as soon as I saw his face. His gaze was pure love, but there was also something else in his expression, something serious that made me feel like I was about to receive an important message. He looked into my eyes and said, "It was not your time." His voice was not just a sound. It was something I felt deep inside my being. Every word held a power, a truth impossible to ignore. I wanted to ask so many things, but before I could say anything, he raised a hand, and the world around me changed again. Suddenly I was seeing something that took my breath away. I saw the earth, but not as we know it. It was as if I could see reality behind the veil of the physical. I saw spiritual forces in motion, invisible influences that most people ignore. I saw spiritual chains holding people without them knowing. I saw lights in some places and shadows in others. And then Jesus showed me something that left me speechless. He showed me the truth about what happens when we die. I saw souls coming to this very place. There were people with faces of peace, others with expressions of terror and regret. I saw the weight of their lives reflected in their essence. I saw how their actions on earth determined what would happen after death. I wanted to ask. I wanted to understand more. But Jesus just looked at me with that expression of love and authority that enveloped him, and then he showed me something else, something that left me completely breathless. My heart was beating strongly, or at least I felt it was beating, although I no longer had a physical body. At that moment, the presence of Jesus was so intense that I could barely process what I was seeing. But then, with a single gesture of his hand, everything changed. The place where we were disappeared. Suddenly, I found myself floating above what appeared to be the earth. But it was not the earth as we know it. I saw cities, villages, and people. But what really impacted me was what was behind it. I saw threads of light connecting certain people, a special glow that enveloped some of them. But I also saw dense shadows covering many others. And then I saw something that I will never forget. Before me, Jesus showed me a vision of Africa, not the Africa that we see in the news or in history books, but a different, glorious Africa full of light. I saw magnificent cities, ancient civilizations with a spiritual wisdom that seemed to surpass everything I knew. I saw people with dark skin walking with a presence and authority, a connection with the divine that was almost palpable. Their energy was different, as if they were in tune with something greater, something that the world had forgotten. I looked at Jesus, trying to understand what I was seeing, and then he spoke to me. The truth was hidden from them. His voice reverberated within me like an echo. They were chosen for something big, but the world deceived them, made them forget who they really are. Suddenly, the vision changed. I saw people being torn from their land, separated from their families, forced to forget their roots, their language, their history, and their connection to God, not only for what they lived physically, but for what they were losing spiritually. I saw how, generation after generation, they were told that they were nothing, that they were worthless. And the most impactful, I saw the spiritual influence behind it all. It was not just history, it was a carefully executed plan to erase their identity. Jesus looked at me, and with sadness in his voice, he told me, the enemy feared their power. He feared what they could do if they remembered who they really are. My mind could not understand everything. I felt overwhelmed by the amount of information I was receiving. But then the vision changed again. I saw communities struggling, people who felt trapped without understanding why. I saw many without hope, believing that they were destined to suffer, that there was no greater purpose for them. And then I saw some who were awakening, people who somehow began to remember, to question, to seek something deeper. I saw how a spark was lit in them, and that spark began to illuminate other people. Jesus smiled slightly and said, "The time of awakening has begun." My soul trembled with these words. I wanted to ask more, but before I could, the vision changed once again. What I saw next left me breathless. My body trembled, although I no longer had one. What I was seeing was not just history, it was a truth that had been hidden for generations. I felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of it all, but Jesus remained by my side with that look of love and compassion that made me feel safe. Despite everything I was seeing, the vision became even deeper. I saw the modern world, but not in the way I had seen it before. I saw the invisible structures that controlled people's minds. I saw how, through education, the media, and institutions, the lie had been carefully sown generation after generation so that no one would question anything. Everything was planned so that this truth would never come to light. I saw fear in the hearts of many, an imposed fear, a fear that made them doubt their own value and their own identity. And then Jesus showed me something even more impactful. I saw how the enemy had infiltrated everything, not only in history, but in spirituality itself. Religious structures were created to distort the truth, to make people believe that connection with God was external when it was always internal. People sought answers in the wrong places. Religion had become a manipulation tool to keep people blinded, to keep them slaves of a system that would never allow them to remember. The biggest lie was not physical oppression, but spiritual oppression. If a soul does not know who it is, it will never claim its inheritance. I felt a shiver. This was not just about the past, but about the present and the future. I saw how many people were starting to question the awakening. But the enemy was counterattacking, how the world was filled with constant noise and distractions to prevent the silence needed to hear the voice of God, promoted materialism, individualism, and selfishness to prevent people from realizing themselves and understanding the power they had, when they aligned with their divine purpose. Jesus is now coming. The battle has reached the most critical point. I suddenly saw a great darkness covering the world. It was like a thick veil of shadow that stretched over whole nations. But within that shadow, a network of light was forming, beginning to break through. I saw people awakening, finding their purpose via community, joining families. Healing became spiritual currents breaking through the darkness. And then I understood. It was not just about knowing the truth, but living it. With a serious expression but full of love, the Lord said, "Awakening will not be easy to keep. The enemy will use confusion. The responsibility of guiding others at this time is on the bride." I felt a weight on my shoulders, not a heavy load, but a responsibility. I knew that what I had seen was not to keep for myself, but to share the vision. I saw what would come after. I saw events that would shudder the world. I saw a great transformation. I saw people recovering the truth. It was just before me, and I was trying to assimilate it. I was being returned to my body. I tried to resist. I tried to understand better what I was seeing. But the voice of Jesus resonated. "It's time to come back. Now your mission begins." And in an instant, I opened my eyes, suddenly feeling my body as if wearing tongs. I was back to reality, but nothing seemed the same. All that I had seen, everything I had heard, was recorded in my soul, and my chest rose and fell quickly. I had returned, but I was no longer the same person. The nurses ran with expressions of astonishment and fear on their faces. I knew that what had happened was a miracle. I saw a doctor paralyzed in the doorway with wide eyes, holding a medical record that seemed about to fall from his hands. If they didn't believe I was really alive, my mother held my hand. Amen. May God's grace be with everyone watching and ending this message. Amen.